Welcome back to the MeidasTouch Network, our continuing coverage of the Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell scandal swirling around and threatening to down Donald Trump. We got a new development. We got the final brief being filed by Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers in the United States Supreme Court, arguing not that she's not guilty, not that she didn't commit the crimes, not that she's not a convicted child sex trafficker, but rather that she should get the benefit of a non-prosecution agreement Epstein entered into in Florida that prevented him from being prosecuted in Florida, in the Southern District of Florida. But that's not where she was prosecuted and convicted. She was prosecuted and convicted in New York by the Southern District of New York. She wasn't a signatory to that agreement. She wasn't named in that agreement, but she's claiming that if you stretch the language of the non-prosecution agreement beyond the District of Florida, it reaches all the way into the District of New York and lets her off the hook for her crimes. That's their entire argument. This is a performative puppet theater that we're watching, starring Donald Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell, and her lawyer, Oscar Marcus, along with a supporting role by Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's number 2 in the Department of Justice and former criminal defense lawyer. That's all we're watching. This is just cover, so when then Donald Trump gets around to granting her immunity, and then granting, which he's done, and then granting her a pardon, we'll sort of understand why, that it was a complicated legal issue before the United States Supreme Court. It's not that complicated, okay? John Sauer, the lawyer for the government, Donald Trump's former appellate lawyer, just filed a brief 10 days ago that I did a report on, in which he laid out meticulously all the crimes and criminal conduct that the jury convicted Ghislaine Maxwell of, which boils down to child sex trafficking. 9-0. Beyond a reasonable doubt, in front of a jury, after weeks of testimony, after they had to capture her, after she was on the run, and she was convicted, period. And and I'll go over it with you in a moment, as Donald Trump is sending in Todd Blanche to go do a quote unquote neutral interview, his own Department of Justice thinks she's guilty, thinks that she should not see the light of day or breathe free air ever again. Now, David Oscar Marcus is connected to the Department of Justice because one of his friends is Todd Blanche, who's Donald Trump's friend. You see where this is going? I'm going to wrap it all together with the new filing before the United States Supreme Court and tell you why she's going to lose, or she should lose, before that Supreme Court. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Okay, so what is the brief? Who filed the brief? David Oscar Marcus. Who's that? That's a lawyer in Miami who's well connected to Ghislaine Maxwell through Alan Dershowitz, a Harvard law professor by day and often implicated in the Epstein scandal by night, not only as his lawyer, if you know what I mean. So Alan Dershowitz, who's running around on Fox News saying Ghislaine Maxwell should be let out of prison. Ghislaine Maxwell is the Rosetta Stone. She needs to be given immunity. He's pumping Ghislaine Maxwell because his buddy, David Oscar Marcus, from their days back at Harvard, is her lawyer. In fact, I'm sure David Oscar Marcus got picked by Dershowitz to represent Maxwell. Here's a clip of just in the last couple of days of Dershowitz promoting Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Beating the drum right on cue from Donald Trump's talking points to muster some sympathy for her. Let's roll that clip.
But in the meantime, you suggest she should be potentially offered congressional immunity to go and testify. Do you think that would happen? And what kind of information would she have that we haven't seen?
She knows everything. She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. I'm told that she actually would be willing to testify, and there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information. So I don't see any negative in giving her the kind of use immunity that would compel her to testify. So she ought to be summoned in front of a congressional committee.
Well, we'll continue to track her case. Professor, thank you for weighing in and giving us a little bit of an insider look at what you know. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. And now we also know that as part of this puppet theater, that Donald Trump has authorized instructed his lawyer, Todd Blanche, to go to Tallahassee, Florida. He did it a couple of days ago and do 12 hours worth of interviews. Now, we don't know the results of those interviews from Todd Blanche, but we do know some of it from David Oscar Marcus because he gave a press conference. Here's a clip.
We're finished after all day yesterday and today. Ghislaine answered every single question asked of her over the last day and a half. She answered those questions honestly, truthfully, to the best of her ability. She never invoked a privilege. She never refused to answer a question. So we're very proud of her. Remember, people have questioned her honesty, which I think is just wrong. Remember, a juror lied to get onto the jury, admitted to lying to get onto her jury. She did not get a fair trial. No prosecutor even mentioned her until Epstein died. So we feel that the process for Ghislaine has been unfair. She was denied bail. She was treated worse than an animal would be treated in jail when she was first held, woken up every 15 minutes. So we're just trying to get through the process where we are now and get her some relief. We don't know how it's going to play out. We just know that this was the first opportunity she's ever been given to answer questions about what happened. And so the truth will come out about what happened with Mr. Epstein, and she's the person who's answering those questions. The government at the time promised Jeffrey Epstein that any potential co-conspirators would not be prosecuted. And so she deserves that promise. And I'm surprised. I don't think President Trump knows that the Justice Department took the position that that promise should not be upheld. President Trump is the ultimate deal maker. He knows that a promise made on behalf of the government should bind the government. And so we're hoping the Supreme Court agrees with us that when the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida promised that no potential co-conspirators would be prosecuted, that bound the Southern District of New York as well.
Are you hoping for a deal as a result of this meeting?
We're not going to comment on what we're hoping for. We just today and yesterday answered questions.
Which brings us to the briefing at the United States Supreme Court. First, let me read you what Donald Trump's own lawyer, the Solicitor General, the number 4 in the Department of Justice, Donald Trump's favorite criminal appellate lawyer because it was his own. This is what he wrote about this argument, not that she's not guilty, but that she should get the benefit of a non-prosecution agreement because it said that Epstein would be let off the hook if he pled guilty to a state charge of soliciting prostitution from a minor. That's the least of his worries. He committed pedophile and raped women, girls, 1,000 of them. We know that now. If he had been shut down then by Alex Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for Southern District of Florida, we may not have the Epstein scandal that we have today. What happened to Alex Acosta? He got promoted. He became the U.S. Labor Secretary under Donald Trump after this. A reward? I'll let you be the judge. Okay, so here's what John Sauer writes last week in his brief to the United States Supreme Court. From 1994 to 2004, Maxwell coordinated, facilitated, and contributed to the multimillionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse of numerous young women and underage girls. That means he raped girls. The abuse followed a pattern. Maxwell and Epstein would identify vulnerable girls living under difficult circumstances, isolate them from their friends and families, gaining their trust by giving them gifts and pretending to be their friends, normalizing the discussion of sexual topics and sexual touching with the girls, and then transition to sexual abuse, often through the pretext of a girl giving Epstein a massage. And they carried on these activities in Palm Beach and in New York until it all got investigated at some point. Physio, chiropractic, and massage therapy are all great resources for when you need them. But going to these appointments every few months does not give me the ultimate results I'm looking for when it comes to my well-being. It's taking daily, even hourly opportunities to move my body that makes the biggest difference. This has only been made possible for me with this episode's sponsor, Uplift Desk. Uplift Desk is at the forefront of ergonomic solutions, promoting better posture and health through adjustable standing desks designed to help you live a healthier lifestyle. Plus, they have all kinds of accessories to keep you moving throughout the day, even if you work for only a few hours at your desk. For me, I love the Bamboo Motion X board. It makes me feel like snowboarding without waiting for the lift. Standing while I work gives me the room to move and helps me get the creative juices flowing. Moving throughout the day helps me focus and stay productive. And I'm way more alert when I'm using my standing desk and I have more energy. A desk should fit the user, which is why Uplift Desk has a lot of customization options, so you can build your perfect workspace. With more than 200,000 configurations, Uplift Desk allows you to tailor your workspace to perfectly suit your style and needs, empowering you to create an environment that inspires productivity and creativity. For me, I built the custom standing desk of my dreams from Uplift for my Popok media offices, where I make a lot of my hot takes and content for Legal AF. And so I went all out with a heritage oak top and their advanced angled keypad for the lift part. Make this year yours by going to upliftdesk.com/legalaf and use our code LegalAF to get 4 free accessories, free same-day shipping, free returns, and an industry-leading 15-year warranty that covers your entire desk, and an extra discount off your entire order. That's upliftdesk.com/legalaf for a special offer, and it's only available at our link. Start 2025 right. Stand, move, thrive with Uplift Desk. And the U.S. Attorney's Office, maybe from pressure from other people that are powerful in Palm Beach, I can think of one, gave Epstein a sweetheart deal, which avoided the thousands of women that he had abused. Now, in there, it listed 4 co-conspirators, not named Ghislaine Maxwell, and other co-conspirators. Now, the big argument here is that the non-prosecution agreement was clear, that it was only between the Southern District of Florida U.S. Attorney's Office and Epstein. That other U.S. Attorney's Office were not bound by it, nor was the Department of Justice in Washington. But David Oscar Marcus wants to twist those words and say, well, you see where it says that Epstein will only be not investigated or prosecuted outside of only the Southern District of Florida are making these promises to Epstein, so he'll not be prosecuted in Florida, but other jurisdictions are up for grabs. His argument is that in negotiating the deal, Epstein obtained a broader release, a broader non-prosecution agreement for unnamed co-conspirators like Ghislaine Maxwell than he obtained for himself. Let me put that back together again. The lawyers representing Epstein represented Epstein. They negotiated the best deal you can presume they could obtain. In that deal, they got the Southern District of Florida U.S. Attorney's Office to agree not to prosecute Epstein in return for an exchange. They also added language about the co-conspirators because they were worried that he gets sucked back in through a co-conspirator investigation. And so their argument, David Oscar Marcus's Ghislaine Maxwell argument is, well, they didn't also put that phrase in Southern District of Florida, so Epstein negotiated a better deal for your unnamed client who didn't sign the non-prosecution agreement that he negotiated for himself. That's beyond belief. Let me read you from the brief so you know I'm not making this up. And we'll post this on the Legal AF Substack. David Oscar Marcus, same lawyer interviewing just a couple of days ago. I mean, you can't avoid him on television. He's pumping, trying to get that pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's what he says on page 3. The very purpose of the petitioner's argument is that the parties to the NPA, that would be Epstein and everybody not named Ghislaine Maxwell, that's an agreement, did seek to control the scope of the relevant clauses by narrowing the scope of immunity for Epstein through the use of narrow language specifying enforceability only in the Southern District of Florida, and then expanding the scope of it to his co-conspirators by using the term United States. While doing so, Epstein's lawyers were no doubt informed of how that language was interpreted in the jurisdiction in which they were practiced. He goes on to say on page 5, that was on page 3, I mean, he admits on page 4 that the list is, in exchange for Epstein's guilty pleas, the United States also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, including but not limited to 4 names not named Epstein. Okay? And then he goes off on the rest of the brief. That's basically the argument. But I want to make it clear to you so that there's no confusion. Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal to the United States Supreme Court is not that there were errors in the trial. There were errors in evidence being admitted against her. People lied about her. There was perjury. The judge was biased. The judge made mistakes about the admission of evidence. Something went wrong with a juror. Something went wrong with the jury foreperson. Somebody tampered with a witness. None of that. The only thing she's arguing is, yeah, I did all those bad things. However, Epstein, although he didn't mention my name, entered into a typed-up agreement with the Southern District of Florida, and I'm a co-conspirator. And they mentioned the United States, so you can't bring it against me anywhere. I mean, if the United States Supreme Court is paying attention, at least the MAGA majority, the questions that are going to be asked are, why would Epstein and his lawyers negotiate a better deal for an unnamed co-conspirator than they did for themselves? Since they won't be able to answer that question, the lawyers for Maxwell, in any coherent fashion, she should lose at the United States Supreme Court. This is the last set of briefs, okay? There is generally oral argument. If there is, we'll put it up on Legal AF so you can watch it live with commentary. And then the United States Supreme Court, it won't be this summer, and then the United States Supreme Court sometime in the fall or next spring, we'll get around on this issue. The reason I think you're going to see a delay with the United States Supreme Court is that they're going to intentionally give breathing room to Donald Trump to try to work something out with Maxwell, to try to mitigate this scandal that's engulfed his administration. And they're going to do him a solid by not taking this case up fast. So then Donald Trump in some press release or spokesperson can say, well, Donald Trump's pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. There's complicated legal issues about the enforceability of an agreement down in Florida, and therefore the rest. I mean, even David Oscar Marcus, that's exactly what he's saying out loud. Well, government, should be abiding by their contracts. Donald Trump knows about deals and contracts. Yeah, but this wasn't the deal or contract with your client. But you can see where the Supreme Court, by delaying and foot dragging and making a decision here, rolling into 2026, Donald Trump will say, well, I've taken a look at the evidence myself, and my experts have, and relying on Todd Blanche, here's the puppet theater, I'm going to pardon Maxwell. She was some sort of scapegoat. Well, go tell that to the more than 1,000 victims. Many of them were underage, meaning they were girls, when they were raped through a combination of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Go tell it to them. I mean, we shouldn't be shocked. We've got a felon in chief. We've got a sex abuser in chief in the White House with a long history of misogyny and sexual abuse of women. So is anybody shocked that he's even in the transom of his mind considering a pardon of a convicted child sex abuser? Convicted of that in a conspiracy, and has already approved immunity being given to her as a convict? I'm not. We're going to continue to follow it. I'll let you know what happens with the United States Supreme Court. You're here on the MeidasTouch Network. Come on over to Legal AF, the Substack, Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and help us grow there as well. Till my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.